Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside of Hogwarts. He teaches magic through unusual theories, fairy tale logic, and manipulation, changing Hogwarts.
For me to establish my status as a magic master at school. He strode forward, not even having time to draw his wand, grabbed Harry's shoulder, pulled him away from the snake, and quickly gave Professor Snape a wink. After all, he noticed that while Professor Snape was sneering and looking forward to seeing Harry make a fool of himself, he was also constantly gripping his wand tightly, preparing for any potential big problems. Perfect, Professor Lockhart laughed heartily, exclaiming, "A truly perfect duel." He gripped Harry's shoulders firmly, using his towering frame to shield Harry from the python. "I am afraid. Of course, I am a little afraid." But he believed Snape should be able to handle the snake. If all else fails, Professor Dumbledore will step in. All he needed to do was project the image of a fearless magic master facing the giant serpent. "I trust everyone." Before he could finish speaking, a young wizard in the audience suddenly exclaimed, "Was that Parsline?" Then many other young wizards who weren't initially sure joined in, shouting, "I heard Harry Potter talking to that snake." "Yes, I heard it too. My God, this is unbelievable. I've heard that only the most wicked wizards know parsley." The crowd below was buzzing with discussion, and Lockhart quickly shouted for order, urging the prefects to quiet everyone down as soon as possible. He glanced back furtively, and seeing that the giant python had vanished, he breathed a sigh of relief and began to speak eloquently. "In fact, parsnip isn't just something that dark wizards can do. If any of you were to go on an adventure in the Amazon like I have, you would find that many tribes there have parsnip speakers. Strictly speaking, Parseltongue is also a profound branch of defense against the dark arts. I think the most representative example is our great headmaster Dumbledore, who is not only fluent in Parseltongue, but also mermaid language, goblin language." Dumbledore watched with amusement as Lockhart confused the young wizards about the difference between Parseltongue, an innate talent, and Parseltongue, an acquired skill. Professor McGonagall stepped forward. She knew that what Professor Lockhart said could ease the situation, but she was not happy to see the students confuse the concepts of Parseltongue and Parseltongue, as this went against her teaching philosophy. "All right, kids." With a wave of her hand, the auditorium, which Lockhart had arranged to dim, lit up again. "This class is over. Please leave the classroom in an orderly manner." She looked at everyone meaningfully. "Even if some of you can't understand the magic of fairy tale romance, Professor Lockhart's 7 key points are very insightful, and I hope you will think about them more. Class leaders, let's go back to the dorms." The audience was in complete chaos. Everyone had no choice but to obey Professor McGonagall's instructions and walk out amidst the chaotic discussion about what had just happened with Harry Potter. Fortunately, many young wizards still look forward to becoming powerful and focus more on the true meaning of magic that Professor Lockhart had just explained. On the stage, surrounded by the professors, especially Dumbledore's deep, emotionless eyes, Harry felt somewhat uneasy. "Harry Potter," Professor Snape strode forward, looking down at Harry with malice. "Let's see what kind of surprise our savior has brought us this time." Harry didn't know how to deal with the situation. His mind was a mess. He didn't even need to look up to know what kind of narrow-minded gaze the evil Snape was giving him. "Yes, that's amazing." Suddenly a hearty laugh rang out, and a warm arm gently embraced him. Harry looked up and saw Professor Lockhart. Professor Lockhart gently squeezed his shoulder, as if to give him the strength to face everything. "Sophistry, what an enviable ability." Professor Lockhart raised an eyebrow at Professor Snape. "Of course, you and I both grew up in the Muggle world, so you should be familiar with Muggle genetics. Skipping generations is perfectly normal. Professor Snape chuckled coldly. It had better be the idea you came up with. Professor Lockhart simply smiled and didn't argue further. He then beckoned to Draco Malfoy, who was looking at Harry with surprise and disbelief. Your performance was truly outstanding, and I must give you some rewards. Of course, I also need to offer you some psychological counseling regarding your overly immersed state of mind just now. As he spoke, he looked at the professors around him, especially Dumbledore. Should I take the children away first? Very good. Harry was very grateful that Professor Lockhart had stepped in to save him at the crucial moment. He didn't want to stay there at all. The way people were looking at him made him uncomfortable. He suddenly felt a little sorry for having thought Professor Lockhart was a bad person before. Clearly, the professor in front of him was not only a powerful wizard, but also a good person. Soon, our good man received Dumbledore's permission to take Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy to his office. These two kids are definitely worth the investment. Leaving aside the original protagonist Harry Potter, just considering Draco Malfoy, the power of the pure-blood family he represents is incredibly strong. What could be more endearing and respected to a parent like Mr. Lucius Malfoy than a child's teacher? Perfect. Moreover, putting aside the future, what could be more suitable as assistants than these two little guys in the upcoming classes? Whenever there's a need to cast spells, just bring these two out for a spin, and you won't even have to lift a finger yourself. With just a little nurturing, these two children with such potential could develop considerable strength. Even if no one had ever seen him cast a spell, no one would doubt his status as a magic master who could teach such outstanding students. Absolutely perfect. 13. Lockhart's desire. It must be said that Harry Potter has a certain talent for winning people's attention. On one rare occasion, Lockhart walked through the school castle without being surrounded by a group of enthusiastic fans. After politely greeting him, the students he encountered all hid in a corner and pointed at Harry. This made Harry feel terrible. Lockhart chuckled and patted him on the shoulder, beckoning him to follow. Outstanding people often attract jealousy and scrutiny, and endure criticism and gossip. I'm very experienced in this, he said, gesturing to Draco. I think our Mr. Malfoy feels the same way. Draco, seeing Harry's astonished expression, simply tilted his head back proudly and gave a soft hum. It's obvious that Parsley is an exceptional talent, and I think our Mr. Malfoy, like me, would envy you. Lockhart's words made Draco feel less proud. He opened his mouth, but in the end, he just pursed his lips and remained silent. Lockhart then winked at Harry, as if to say, "See, I told you so." Harry immediately felt much better. The three of them finally arrived at Lockhart's office. After inviting the two little ones to sit down, Lockhart smiled and continued talking to them. In fact, Parslinism does not necessarily mean evil. Many people tend to use abilities to distinguish between good and bad people, which is full of prejudiced stereotypes. But we can't change these stereotypes, so smart people know how to exploit them. Draco had been uninterested in Lockhart's invitation, but upon hearing his words, he was suddenly stunned. His father, Lucius, had taught him that breaking the rules did not signify strength. Rather, obeying the rules and then utilizing them was the mark of wisdom. Perhaps Professor Lockhart and his father would have a lot in common. What should I do, Professor? Harry Potter was drawn in by Lockhart's words. Lockhart just smiled at him. What are you doing? Proving you're not a dark wizard. Proving you're not an evil person. Harry nodded seriously. Sometimes life is really sad. We're always running around trying to prove ourselves, Lockhart sighed, pulling a pen from the pen holder and quickly writing on a piece of parchment on the table before pushing it towards Harry. There is a book in the library's restricted section called The Oldest Spells, which contains several powerful and ancient spells, one of which is called the Guardian Spell. People who cannot feel true joy and beauty in their hearts cannot express it. Look, people like to call such people evil, just like the prejudice that having a parsnip voice means a bad person. He shrugged, looking at Harry with interest. Countless people with stereotypes can attest that dark wizards are simply incapable of casting the Patronus charm. That's the easiest way to prove you're a good person, even under the Ministry of Magic's Weissengammer trial. But it's difficult, Harry. Are you confident you can learn it? Har gripped the professor's permission to borrow books from the restricted area tightly. His resolute expression said it all. Most wizards in this world can only release a cloud of silver smoke when they cast this spell. Only a very few wizards can summon the Patronus in its complete form. Harry, I have high expectations for you. This child lacks self-motivation in learning, but now that he has the drive to prove himself, Lockhart is looking forward to the wonderful scene of a second-year wizard successfully casting the Patronus charm. He might be able to publish another book, My Professorial Career and the Untold Story of Harry Potter, and who knows, he could make another fortune in royalties. What's most interesting is that Lockhart himself had already begun to conceive the general framework and some details of this book after accepting Dumbledore's invitation, and had already had some preliminary content. With a few minor modifications, it can be published directly. Tesk nice Tilda. Next up is our Draco Malfoy. Lockhart was equally interested in the child. He knew all too well how to pique the child's interest, waving his quill pen and mimicking the famous disarming charm gesture, which made Draco's pupils shrink. Draco had just experienced the greatest humiliation of all, being knocked away by Harry Potter's disarming charm in front of the entire school and crashing to the ground in a very embarrassing manner. The disarming charm is a spell with a very wide range of applications. Lockhart spoke eloquently, immediately capturing the attention of the two young wizards. The Dark Cube defense spell can be used in three main areas: against dark wizards, in duels, and even against dark magical creatures. Furthermore, the disarming charm can also be used when facing the threat of magical creatures. In the original story, Harry Potter used the disarming charm to make the spider release him. Many people know the effect of the disarming charm and how important it is for a wizard who needs a wand. So you must not only know how to use the disarming charm better, but also master its counter-charm. Yes, except for the unforgivable curse, every curse has a corresponding counter-curse. He demonstrated the casting technique for the famous anti-spell, which is actually very simple. Flick your wrist and swing it diagonally upwards like drawing a checkmark. With a gentle flick, the opponent's attack was instantly neutralized. It's actually not difficult. Many adult wizards are proficient in the silent casting of this countercurse. Of course, you can start by learning the most basic methods of dealing with disarming spells, so that when you learn counterspells, you can easily and naturally use them. Even when facing an enemy's disarming spell, at the critical moment, when you feel your wand is about to fly out of your hand, this casting technique, combined with the wizard's instinct to grip the wand tightly, can quickly make up for the lost opportunity. This was his reward for the two of them. Draco's eyes lit up as he listened intently. He never wanted to be thrown on the butt by Harry Potter in public again with a disarming charm. As for Harry, once he discovered that his disarming charm was ineffective against his nemesis Draco, he began to use other spells. Plans are in place. Lockhart could proudly declare that probably no one in the world understands the disarming charm better than him, not even Dumbledore. After all, old Deng was too awesome. Almost no one could disarm him smoothly, so he didn't need to specifically study every subtle technique of the disarming spell. The dozen or so powerful wizards in Lockhart's memory, who faced various dangers year after year each, had their own rich experience. Now, Lockhart is teaching these two people almost without reservation. This part could even be published as a book, detailing the possible disarming spells that a wizard might face from every angle, categorizing and explaining various coping techniques, as well as tips for casting disarming spells. This even includes different staff-holding techniques for facing enemies of different levels. Watch my hand gestures. When facing a stronger enemy, you shouldn't grip your wands too tightly. This will prevent you from being carried away by the wand. As long as you're not completely affected, you can now draw your spare wands and deliver the final, decisive blow when the enemy thinks you're incapacitated. When facing enemies weaker than us, be careful. Their disarming spells will also take effect when they hit you, but they won't knock us away directly. So we need to adopt this posture at this time. Does this look familiar? Ha, this is the signature move of maneuvering a flying broom to quickly dodge enemies and maintain the ability to counterattack at any time. It's an application of this technique. You'll find that when you strike this pose, the disarmed wand will fly back into your arms. If you just reach out and grab it, you'll even find that the wand stays in your palm, just like catching the golden snitch in Quidditch. Lockhart didn't notice that several figures had somehow appeared at the office door. Dumbledore, Professor McGonagall, and Professor Snape, who had arrived at some unknown time, were also listening intently. The most comprehensive, detailed, and practical methods, with such erudition and knowledge analyzing every detail of actual combat. Even these three veteran wizards who had experienced many wizard battles were amazed. Professor Snape had to admit that perhaps he had misjudged Lockhart. Was Lockhart really such a fool? Those boastful words from the past seemed to have truly become the best explanation for Lockhart's self-promotion. He had no idea that Lockhart, who was deliberately gesturing with a quill, was looking at the two young wizards with such envy. Hemp egg. He also longed to have the ability to cast spells. Having so much magical knowledge in his mind, yet being unable to successfully cast it, was pure torture for him. Chapter 13, I'll set the stage, you perform. Chapter 90, I'll set the stage, you perform. This place is strange. Draco Malfoy adjusted the wood in the fireplace with tongs, his brow furrowed slightly. In your description, there's too much magical element. Lockhart listened as he rummaged through the house, finally finding a framed photo deep inside a cupboard. In the photo, he was standing behind an old woman with his arm around Hermione's shoulder. There should have been another person beside them, but they had been cut off. There are werewolves in the town who are said to attack at night, but we all know that werewolves only transform on the night of a full moon, so it's possible that someone is up to no good in the dark. There are said to be evil witches in the wild and wild beasts living in castles. Draco, who had grown noticeably, analyzed logically. But I don't think we should approach this witch at this time. Who knows what might happen if we encounter a dark wizard? Young Master Malfoy was well protected by Lucius and Narcissa, and rarely had the opportunity to come into contact with dark wizards, but he was also taught from a young age about the destructiveness and unpredictable cruelty of dark wizards. This cruelty might even involve practicing dark magic beyond one's control, causing one's heart to be corrupted by dark forces and become twisted, resulting in unpredictable behavior. Even the Malfoy family tries their best to avoid dealing with such people. I asked the hunters who came to the blacksmith's shop to buy weapons, and they said that the wild beasts in the castle can't run too far and are enemies of the werewolves. The last force is the hunters of the town, who make a living by hunting and are skilled in various traps and hunting methods. They often gathered in taverns to drink or at the Red Bohinia ballroom, two entertainment venues where they were powerful but ignorant and easily swayed by certain individuals. Lockhart found a can of black tea, poured some into a pot, added some water, and placed it on the fireplace mantel to heat it. He then lay down on the sofa in front of the fireplace, letting his shoulders and back sink in. He had experienced too much today and was already feeling quite tired. He spent the whole night teaching Lal Lupin, then led a team on a journey only to be imprisoned again, and his magical state changed as well. Hunter, werewolf, witch, beast. He tapped his fingers lightly on the armrest. It seems a balance has been established, and perhaps an external force will emerge to break this balance. Draco asked, puzzled, "You mean us?" Lockhart shrugged. "Uncertain. It could also be the force that the city you mentioned might get involved in next." He turned to look at Draco, who seemed to have matured overnight, and suddenly realized that the young wizard had also experienced a lot during this time. Two close friends are petrified beside him, while he narrowly escapes death. He may then discover that Voldemort is purging traitors, including his father and his friends' fathers, and then the adventure begins. Perhaps for Draco, this is not just an adventure, but an important mission to save his two friends. That's how the world is. From different perspectives, everyone has their own story, and everyone is the protagonist of their own story. Lockhart observed Draco's condition, nodded, and gestured for him to continue. "I was planning to talk to Ron and Hermione, and persuade Ron to put up some money so we could all leave here and go to the city to avoid danger. I even had a reason in mind, to go find Ron's twin brothers." "Life is tough," Malfoy sighed, shrugging and gesturing to Ron, who was fast asleep beside him. "I never thought Hermione would run away, and Ron would end up like this. For a second-grade wizard to think of something like this is good enough. He deserves praise for being excellent." But after learning about their situation, Lockhart was filled with anticipation for Hermione. He smiled slightly. "I know about Hermione's situation. She has already set off on her adventure." "Set off? Where to go on an adventure?" Draco seemed a little confused. "She didn't say. Or perhaps it's better to say this." Lockhart poured the brewed black tea into a cup, set down the teapot, and then, with a meaningful expression, said, "She has broken free from the definitions and positions given to her by the environment and society, and is forging her own path. This is the adventure." Professor Lockhart often tells stories of magical adventures. Draco became excited. He knew that with Hermione gone, Ron couldn't possibly leave, and that he, the poor little blacksmith, really had no way to leave the town on his own. But that's clearly no longer the point. Professor Lockhart's words reminded him that he should consider exploring his own magical path in this adventure, something the professor had repeatedly mentioned before the trip. "What should I do?" he asked anxiously. Lockhart shrugged. "You shouldn't be asking me that question. Ask yourself." "I..." Draco opened his mouth, then suddenly realized and just stared blankly at the flames in the fireplace. Lockhart has taught them everything he needed to, and there's no point in saying more. In the past 6 months of teaching, he has explained things thoroughly enough and guided them through practical exercises. But teaching doesn't mean they know how to do it. Doing it doesn't mean they can use it. And being able to use it doesn't mean it suits their talents. Whether it can truly guide them onto the magical path of self-discovery remains to be seen. Needless to say, many people in the Ministry of Magic can't even cast a single ironclad charm these days. That's truly a case of returning all knowledge to the professors at magic schools. This is their own path. No one has the right to interfere. Lockhart is not a babysitter. He is a professor who is willing to provide opportunities for everyone to improve themselves and who needs everyone as his assistants, nothing more. On his way from the deformed werewolf castle to this town, he had been familiarizing himself with his magical powers, and finally felt that original magic again because of his jubilant state. It wasn't difficult, it just took a little time. And so he once again felt his wand and his group of dark magic creatures. As he sat on the sofa, he felt as if his whole body was sinking rapidly, like water falling out of a bottle and then falling back into it to fill the bottle, gradually fitting back into his body. His five senses quickly contracted from their stretched to the limit state, and he was back at the crab family's colorful ball fish farm in the Bialoyeza forest. He could see himself holding up his wand, maintaining the telepathic spell, and a burst of emerald green light erupted from the tip of the wand, painting a distorted and bizarre world around him. Harry, Draco, and the other young wizards all stood around him, while Snape stood guard to the side, motionless like statues. Little golden retriever, the wrongfully killed fairy, Boggart, and the winged demon, these companions faithfully guarded their surroundings. This is the true state of everyone. Everyone's minds, guided by his magic, extended to the unknown, establishing a spiritual connection with the dark magic creature, the sack sheath. Then a wondrous state occurred. The spiritual power of everyone participating in the adventure merged with the phenomena of the dark magic creatures, resulting in such an interesting scene. Everyone entered a bizarre and fantastical fairy tale world. This state cannot be accurately described as entering a dream together, because the world exists in a state that is real to them but unreal to others in the world outside of them. This is what is often referred to as non-existence in the field of defense against the dark arts. Perhaps it can be described this way. All their memories and even souls, including those of the dark magic creature, Sack Sheath, were extracted and placed into a meditation basin where their thoughts collided and sparked wondrous ideas. These sparks of thought radiate magical power. Maintaining the mind communication state for a long time didn't seem difficult. It was like turning on a switch, and the machine started running on its own. Lockhart sensed his own state, and then looked at the others around him. Several members of the adventure team have already begun to unleash their mental power, spreading it out, and adding their own color to the scene surrounded by emerald green light. Among them, Snape was the most dazzling, followed by Hermione, and then Luna, George, and Fred. Harry, Tilde. Lockhart observed the scene with great interest. Old C seems to have changed because of him. He said that the original work is no longer the original work. Otherwise, he would have wasted his time traveling. He should bring something to this world. Hermione is also good. Although she lacks a bit of inspiration after being taught, she really dares to think and act, and does things in a down-to-earth manner. Luna and the Weasley twins are the kind of people who are particularly spiritual, which may be the most suitable for what he proposed. A fairy tale adventure on the path to finding magical powers. As for Harry, Lockhart had no idea what Harry was going through. All he could sense was the intense joy and happiness emanating from Harry. The power emanating from the Patronus charm was visibly increasing as he observed it, showing signs of surpassing Snape's. Amazing. The Savior truly deserves the title of Savior. Perfect. Lockhart was satisfied with this state, certain that he could kick everyone out of this spiritual communication connection at any time, and then let his thoughts enter an extended state along the wand once again. Soon his consciousness reappeared in that world. The firewood in the fireplace crackled and popped. Ron's snoring and the chirping of insects outside the window rose and fell in waves. Draco stared silently at the fire, lost in thought. He clearly had some ideas, his expression shifting. Not bad, young man. Looks like you've gotten into the swing of things too. I'll set the stage, you'll perform, go find your own magical path, Unleash the power of your hearts and fight together against the influence of the dark magic creature, Sack's Sheath. Lockhart didn't say anything more, letting Draco figure it out himself. He had to walk his own path, and he had his own things to do. He needs to familiarize himself with the werewolf power within him as soon as possible. Only by possessing power can we fulfill the forest's request as soon as possible. He did not resist the task of the forest, because this unique natural force was always shrouded in mystery and was never sinister. On the contrary, it was full of inclusive maternal radiance. Earth, forests, moonlight, ocean, sky. The power of nature always guides living beings to coexist more harmoniously in the world. Perhaps this is actually the forest guiding itself. 14. The pensive, the wand, and the slug. It is extremely unusual for all students to attend classes together, but it was decided that Defense Against the Dark Arts would have students from all 4 houses in the same year attending the same class. Because the practice of fairy tale romance requires a relatively long time, the 2 classes originally scheduled for grades 2 through 5 were directly combined into one long class. In this way, all 7 grades only need to attend one class, plus the Newt class, which is roughly equivalent to one large class period, so there are only 8 classes per week. From being the busiest professor at Hogwarts to the most leisurely, Lockhart only slightly intervened, which was the limit for the professors. Perfect. I'm a genius. In the office, Lockhart stood with his hands on his hips, laughing smugly, his laughter so unrestrained and alluring that it suddenly turned serious. Hemp egg. He suddenly realized that his smug and overconfident appearance was exactly the same as Lockhart in his memory. Did I become Lockhart after pretending for so long? Or is this just my true nature? Or is it a problem caused by too many confused memories crammed into his head? He frowned, realizing the seriousness of the problem. You should know that Lockhart in the original story eventually became an idiot. I ask you, has anyone ever become an idiot because of the Oblivion Curse? If the Oblivion Curse were truly that terrifying, the auras of various countries and ministries of magic wouldn't so readily use it on muggles. In the original story, Lockhart was simply hit by a reflection of his own Oblivion Curse, which could have been resolved with a counter-curse. However, Lockhart ended up spending the rest of his life as a complete idiot in the magical hospital. Hiss, tilde, tilde, tilde. He gasped, rubbed his face vigorously, and told himself not to panic, as panicking would be useless. The little golden retriever keenly sensed its owner's emotional fluctuations. It dropped the gem-encrusted shoe it was curiously playing with, climbed up his trouser leg to his shoulder, and tilted its head, looking at him with some confusion. Gurgle. Lockhart reached out and lifted it off his shoulder, holding it in his arms and unconsciously stroking its cool, fluffy little head, lost in thought. Looks like I can't wait any longer. I need to find a pensive as soon as possible to process my memories. Many people are afraid to use the pensive because it records all the memories it contains after it has been filled with them. No one wants others to see their embarrassing, shameful, and unknown secrets deep inside. In the wizarding world, wizards' urns are usually buried with their owners because they are very personal items. The only thing Lockhart knew that was particularly special was the pensive at Hogwarts. The pensive has been used by Hogwarts headmasters throughout history, and they have also left behind their life experiences in the form of memories, making it a valuable library that provides current headmasters or headmistresses with various reference data. This isn't something Lockhart can just borrow from Dumbledore at will. He thought for a moment, then sat down at his desk and wrote to Caractacus Burke, the owner of the Burke store, hoping that the owner could help him find an unused meditation basin. Lockhart used to acquire valuable items along the way when hunting down the memories of powerful wizards, and he often sold them off with the help of this boss. This boss has an extremely powerful network of connections. He comes from the Burke family, one of the so-called Holy 28 pure-blood families. His grandmother was Belvina Blair, the daughter of Phineas Black, a former headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. She ran the largest shop in Nocturne Alley and had a great influence among dark wizards. In the original story, the Burke family also controlled one of the secret passages of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, the Vanishing Cabinet, allowing them free access to this supposedly heavily guarded school. However, the Vanishing Cabinet was later damaged, and the descendants forgot about this information, leading to this valuable family artifact being put up for sale. Voldemort worked for this boss when he was young, and even after becoming the Dark Lord, he never thought of coming back to kill his former boss. It can be said that Mr. Borgin has a certain way of dealing with people. If you need a pensive, this is the place to go. For the next period of time, Lockhart seems to be very active at school, causing a sensation wherever he goes. But if you look closely, you'll find that he actually does nothing but attend classes. For younger wizards, he began to teach them all simple spells that were more practical and applicable, such as vanish into the sky, to improve their combat skills. P.S. The move disappearing into the sky was used by Lockhart in the original books, which was a clumsy way to deal with the snakes released by Draco Malfoy's oolong out of the cave. Dumbledore also used it during the battle with Voldemort at the Ministry of Magic. Chapter 36 of the original book, The Order of the Phoenix. When a spell demonstration is needed, talented young wizards are called up to perform. Many young wizards are eager to show off, such as Hermione, the twins, Cedric, Percy. For middle and upper grades, it's even simpler. At the end of 5th grade, there's a common wizarding level exam, and at the end of 7th grade, there's a ultimate wizarding level exam. It's like taking the college entrance exam 5 years and mock exams 3 years in one. We cultivate students to meet exam requirements, fill in any gaps in their foundational knowledge, provide individualized instruction to identify areas where they excel, and strive to ensure that every young wizard can pass. Then we select the best young wizards to aim for top marks. This is no problem for Lockhart. He had so much to teach the young wizard, such as how to organize the knowledge structures in his mind and make them a mutually reinforcing system of knowledge. Even Lockhart, the original owner of the body, didn't understand this as well as he did. Those young wizards who have known Professor Lockhart for some time now know that he spends all his free time reading in the library. He is a wise man who, despite his vast knowledge, still insists on reading. Even Professor McGonagall praised him for setting a great example for young wizards, proving he was a Ravenclaw child. But Lockhart was actually looking for other solutions. The results were not good. There were just too many books in the Hogwarts library, and he had to search through them one by one like looking for a needle in a haystack. Perhaps he would also need to find a bottle of Felix Felicis, a potion that brings good luck, to help him. Fortunately, it wasn't a complete loss. He found some inspiration in a miscellaneous book called You and Me Under Emotional Trauma. The book tells the story of an adventure where a witch who has lost her love tries to heal herself. It mentions a crucial piece of information. When she realized she could never go back, that she was no longer the person she used to be, but a completely new person, she discovered why her spellcasting had become so clumsy. Her wand was no longer suitable for her. However, there are some differences. The witches described in the book became clumsy at casting spells, not completely unable to cast spells like Lockhart. But this is clearly a good idea. Changing to a wand that suits you now might help to some extent. And so the weekend finally arrived. Before the sun had even reached its highest point in the morning, Lockhart hurriedly finished, grading all the papers submitted by his students. This damn sense of responsibility. Even though I was getting a little anxious, I still handled everything patiently. After stretching, Lockhart packed his things and prepared to leave. There aren't many things you need to prepare. You need to have enough galleons, and also put the small makeup box containing boggarts into the pocket of your wizard's robe. You can throw this out to help block a hostile wizard for a while. He hesitated for a moment, thought about it, and then looked at the little golden retriever squatting on the windowsill, basking in the sun and munching on nuts. Can you guarantee you won't attack anyone else without my orders? The little golden retriever understands. It just can't speak. It tilts its head back, blinking its shimmering golden eyes, which look like a fluffy ball of yarn in the sunlight. It nodded. I'll take you out. Lockhart picked it up and stuffed it into his wizard robe pocket, preparing to go find Snape. There are 3 proper ways to get from Hogwarts to other places. One is to take the train from Hogsmeade Station outside the Grove by the Black Lake, but that's too slow. Another is to use apparition from the Skybridge over the castle complex, but Lockhart can't do that. The last option is to use fireplaces, which are found in the principal's office and the offices of the deans of the 4 colleges. Lockhart is a sociable person. He constantly asks others for help with small, easily solvable problems, and the other person will feel close to him because you owe him something. Unfortunately, Lockhart was turned away. He knocked on the door for a long time, but no one answered. After asking a passing classmate, he learned that Snape had taken the upperclassmen to Hogsmeade Village that day. There's no other way. Go find Professor Sprout, the Hufflepuff Dean. She should be in the greenhouse right now. Lockhart had already troubled Professor Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall too much with their work, and he didn't want to bother these 2 busy people with such a trivial matter. As we walked out through the side gate of the castle, passing the Quidditch pitch, we suddenly heard a gasp. He turned his head in surprise and saw the crowd suddenly disperse, with Ron in the middle shouting at the person directly in front of him. A huge, slimy slug was spat out. Eek, tilde, tilde, tilde. Lockhart, an elderly man, leaned back slightly on his phone in the subway, his expression slightly contorted. Magic damage. He figured it out immediately. The anti-nausea spell is the standard counterspell for this evil spell, and it is widely used. He had 7 or 8 upgraded methods for using anti-nausea spells in his mind. The crux of the problem is he can't use any of them. Get out of here quickly. Lockhart immediately made a judgment and pretended to be preoccupied with a problem and lost in thought, oblivious to the outside world as he tried to slip away. Professor Lockhart, a young wizard shouted excitedly, spotting him. Great! Professor Lockhart is here. Hermione was the one who screamed the most excitedly. 15, Ollivander Store. Children, what happened? Lockhart hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward and asked the young wizards with a warm smile, hoping someone could give him an answer. Malfoy Draco was also present, looking rather smug. When he saw Draco approach, his expression shifted for a moment, and he remained silent, pursing his lips. During this time, Harry and Malfoy would occasionally spend time in Professor Lockhart's office learning and practicing how to counter the disarming charm and how to counter it. The proud young Draco gradually began to feel some recognition and respect for the professor, and when Lockhart caught him doing something wrong, he began to avoid eye contact and dared not speak. Professor Draco Malfoy called Hermione a mudblood. George Weasley shouted angrily, pushing aside the classmates who were trying to stop him from fighting. Yes, that's absolutely wicked, Fred Weasley exclaimed, looking as if he wanted to tear Draco apart. Racial discrimination is extremely politically incorrect in Western societies, especially in the wizarding world, where bloodlines are fundamentally important. Lockhart shook his head at Draco. This is absolutely unacceptable. Slytherin will lose 20 points for this, and I will inform your headmaster, Professor Snape, who will then punish you. As they were talking, Ron let out another yelp and spat out another sticky slug, causing many people to gasp in surprise. Lockhart had to turn to Ron. The slug curse. Who attacked him? It was him, Draco shouted, as if seizing an opportunity. He tried to cast a curse on me, but he only hit himself. Lockhart raised an eyebrow in surprise. Of course, it wasn't because Ron's spell was bounced back. He had already recalled the original story and understood the matter. On the first day of school, he rode in his dad's need for speed car and crashed into the school's Whomping Willow, breaking his wand in the process. In the original story, Lockhart stole Ron's wand and used the Oblivion charm, which caused the curse to bounce back and hit him. He knew this. He had never thought about this question before. Ron didn't know any spells before coming to Hogwarts, but now he was able to successfully cast a curse that the school hadn't taught him at the start of his second year. This is even more surprising than Draco Malfoy using the Oolong out of the cave spell. The slug curse is no simple evil spell. A giant slug blocking the throat can prevent the spell from being recited properly, or even cause suffocation and death. This is a spell that's extremely effective in real combat. Ron was not as weak and stupid as he had imagined. It seems that he is a person who works very hard to improve himself in private. Professor Lockhart, will he be all right? Harry and Hermione were both very anxious. It's not a big problem. Under normal circumstances, many wizards can only wait until all the slugs are expelled, and at the same time, they can expel the worms and clear the toxins from their stomachs. Lockhart observed Ron with an air of experience. At his level, it should be finished by noon, so it won't affect his lunch. But nothing can stump me, he's lucky. Lockhart looked at the young wizards around him, clapped his hands, and took the opportunity to teach them a lesson based on this case. I believe that the older students have all learned the counterspell of the slug spell, but I estimate that not many of them can cast it successfully. After all, it is not within the scope of the requirements for the regular wizarding level exam and the ultimate wizarding level exam. In fact, many adult wizards have not been able to master it. It is the dark wizards who deliberately train in this spell and its counterspell, since this evil spell is so useful and often encountered in battle. Imagine the feeling of a powerful wizard casting a slug-spitting spell, only to have the slug get stuck in your throat because it's too big to spit out, forcing you to choke yourself and slowly wait to suffocate. That's how you'll understand how terrifying this spell is. How do we solve this? The answer is to eat some salt or dirt from the ground. This is to interrupt the magic's continuous effect by targeting the slug's properties. Lockhart bent down and scooped up some dirt from the ground. Of course, this doesn't mean the magic has failed in your body. It's just interrupted and won't have any further effect. This is an emergency measure to give yourself a chance to cast a countercurse to remove it. And be wary of others casting amplifying curses or other malevolent curses on you that will affect the slug curse that is still working in your body. After saying this, he stuffed the dirt in his hand into Ron's mouth. Ron was feeling dizzy from vomiting when he suddenly felt a clump of dirt stuffed into his mouth. He quickly spat it all out. After spitting out the dirt, he paused for a moment, puzzled. He touched his stomach, then his neck, and blinked. I'm all better. Wow, the young wizards around exclaimed, and many clapped their hands in admiration. Everyone was cheering. Calm down, basic stuff, no problem. Lockhart gave a standard, perfect smile and gestured for everyone to calm down, but he couldn't stop the young wizard's excitement and fervent worship. Fanatic +1. Fanatic +1. Fanatic +1. Well, Lockhart secretly wiped away a cold sweat. It was quite unlucky to encounter this unexpected situation. He had to deal with it because someone saw him passing by. Fortunately, he knew this simple method. Otherwise, would you really have to take out your wand and cast a counterspell on Ron? He figured it would be more practical to knock Ron unconscious with the stick in his hand. We must leave as soon as possible, before the young wizards have a chance to react, ask questions, or demonstrate the counterspell. Lockhart's reaction was extremely sharp. He seemed to offer a few words of encouragement to the young wizards, but in reality, he had already shut them down and was about to leave. Before leaving, he glanced around and saw a man in the corner of the crowd, looking at his wand, wrapped in tape with frustration. Suddenly, his expression changed, and he called out to him, "Come with me." Ron paused, then asked, "Where to?" "Of course, I'm going to buy a magic wand." He also wanted to have this experienced young wizard teach him how to use the flue-net fireplace. Although Lockhart had the memories of the original owner and other wizards, he had never used it himself. This mode of transportation is not without risks. It is said that mispronouncing the fireplace will lead him to other places, which would be very bad. When the time comes, grabbing Ron won't make anyone think I'm afraid of this. They'll just think I'm concerned about the little wizard. Plan in action. Moreover, Ollivander's wands are subsidized and cost only 7 galleons to students. This might be a considerable expense for an average wizarding family, but not a huge one. But for a great author like Lockhart, with more than a dozen best-selling books, it's not even a fraction of his pocket money. It was just something I did easily. Now that they've all become professors, these young wizards will become part of their network. Investing a few galleons in them is a cost-effective and efficient investment. Ron didn't think so. When Lockhart led him to Professor Sprout for help in getting through the Dean's fireplace to Ollivander's wand shop in Diagon Alley, he finally snapped out of his daze. He looked up at the sign for Ollivander's wand shop, gazing at the wand shop he had longed for and dreamed of for so long, his eyes filled with an irrepressible longing. He was flustered and embarrassed, trying his best to hide the slight timidity and inferiority rising in his heart. He swallowed and made his tone steady. "Professor Lockhart, I forgot to bring money. I'll come and buy it myself next time." Trying to avoid gripping the wand too tightly and to make it look relaxed, I swung the wand, saying, "It's actually still working perfectly. It was just an accident." However, the wand was uncooperative. The tape wrapped around it failed to hold it in place properly, and the broken half drooped down. Ron gasped and quickly pried the half that wasn't completely broken off and stuffed it into the tape, keeping his head down and not daring to look at Lockhart. A warm hand gently rubbed his head. He looked up in surprise and saw a bright, warm smile. "This is a reward, Ron. To stand up so bravely for your friend when he was humiliated, and to be the first to raise your wand. You are a true Gryffindor and a courageous warrior." Poor Ron, who grew up in the shadow of his excellent father, mother, 5 older brothers, and even his sister, never received any recognition for his mediocre performance. This was the most beautiful thing Ron had ever heard in his life. Never, never. No one had ever been so certain of him or spoken such words of praise to him. "Really, really," Ron's eyes were shining. "Of course," Lockhart beckoned him into the shop. "How can a warrior be without a suitable wand? Ron, I look forward to your future achievements on the path of magic." This kind of expectation was something Ron had never felt before, and for a moment he felt his heart burning with excitement. And so, the two walked into the store together. The store manager, Mr. Ollivander enthusiastically measured his height and arm span and asked him a whole bunch of questions, making the shopping experience a breeze. Ron felt completely disoriented. The scene before him seemed to overlap with countless fantasies, appearing so unreal. He took the wand from Mr. Ollivander, and after the latter shook his head and took it back, he watched expectantly as Mr. Ollivander rummaged through the shelves in the store, his eyes fixed on the wand he was about to receive. His magic wand. Instead of the slightly damaged old wand that Charlie used, with unicorn hair sticking out from the end. They can't expect me to do as well as my brothers at school with a wand that doesn't fit me and is about to break, he sometimes even thought to himself. He was so excited that he didn't even notice that Professor Lockhart was also buying a wand. It is 14 inches, 35.56 cm, long and not very straight, with a certain curvature and a short, curled fork because the skillful wand is more suited to the elegant spellcaster. The material is applewood, and Mr. Ollivander went on and on about it. It is said that the holders of applewood wands are generally very popular and long-lived, and I have also noticed that the guests who successfully match with applewood wands are all very charismatic. Many people who hold applewood wands are gifted in communicating with other species, including Dylan Marwood, the author of Mermaids, the complete guide to language and tradition. The only problem is that applewood wands have a certain degree of resistance to the casting of dark magic. The wand core is made of unicorn tail hair. Unicorn tail hair is generally the most stable for casting spells and the least likely to cause fluctuations or blockages. Wands with unicorn tail hair cores are generally the least likely to succumb to dark magic. This wand is almost the complete opposite of Lockhart's original wand. A gifted ability to communicate with other species, the ability to cast spells in a stable rather than flexible manner, and the fact that both the staff and its core resist dark magic. Mr. Ollivander looked at Lockhart's expression subtly. You look so different from how you used to be. Lockhart offered no explanation, simply gazing intently at the wand in his hand, feeling a sudden surge of elation within him, and smiled. This is quite nice, isn't it? Yes, Mr. Ollivander said with certainty. 16 crystal bird snake skull and magic eyeball. After buying the wand, Lockhart told Ron to go back to school first. He sent Ron back directly through the fireplace in Ollivander's shop and cautiously checked with Professor Sprout across the street through the fireplace to confirm that Ron had arrived safely. After all, taking a second-year wizard off campus is not exactly against the rules, and if you take him to Nocturne Alley, which is full of dark wizards, Professor McGonagall would have a problem with it. I bought a black wizard's robe with a large hood at the Madame Malkin's robes shop in Diagon Alley, and then casually picked up a funny mask with the publisher's name printed on it from the entrance of Wizard Publishing House on their anniversary before heading to the Leaky Cauldron at the alley entrance. Tom, the owner of the Leaky Cauldron, offers some little-known services, such as temporarily using guest rooms to change clothes. This is quite common at this bar, located at the intersection of Nocturne Alley, Diagon Alley, and the Muggle world outside. Lockhart simply nodded subtly to his boss, Tom, who then expertly led him up the dark corridor of the back guest rooms with an oil lamp. They booked a small private room on the second floor, and after changing clothes, they went directly down a staircase into the back alley. Many people know the internationally renowned author Lockhart, and some desperate and down-on-their-luck dark wizards might not mind trying to find a way to make money from him. Besides, his identity is not suitable for him to come here directly, so he often disguises himself as a dark wizard. Covering themselves completely, this furtive appearance is quite common in Flip-Flop Alley. He arrived at the Bogenbock store quickly. It's easy to find. This shop is the best and largest in Nocturne Alley. It's a standalone building with two bright, domed floor-to-ceiling windows, so you don't have to worry about being robbed of your space to display your precious magical items to the evil dark wizards on the street. When they arrived, a beautiful young noblewoman was selecting antique jewelry. She was none other than the fervent fan from a pure-blooded family who had previously sent Lockhart swimsuit photos. Receiving this letter on the day, he transmigrated greatly stimulated him, instantly igniting his longing for the wizarding world. Lockhart didn't go up to greet him, but patiently stood aside and waited. Reaching into the wizard's robe, he suppressed the restless little golden retriever. It had been unusually excited to be in this shop, full of jewels, like a dog entering a cesspool. Powerful as it was completely unafraid of the protective curses Mr. Borgin had cast on the merchandise, but this was inappropriate. Finally, after the young nobleman left satisfied with the jewelry, he walked from the shelf to the counter. Before they even reached the counter, a gilded mummy coffin placed beside it suddenly began to shake violently. Mr. Borgin's expression changed, and he warily drew his wand, pointing it at Lockhart. Hold! What are you doing? Lockhart's expression hardened as he looked at the wand aimed at him. This is different from facing Dumbledore, Professor McGonagall, and others. The dark wizards in Nocturne Alley might actually launch an attack spell right from the start. With his current strength, he is completely incapable of facing any battle. Well, he has absolutely no strength. He's just like a muggle. Even when faced with some probing magic, they would be exposed immediately. It's like an unarmed person running into a gang's hideout full of armed thugs. It makes one feel panicked. But the more this is the case, the more we must not be weak. Pointing your wand at me is hardly polite. Lockhart snorted and deliberately patted the pocket of his wizard's robe to soothe the little golden retriever. This dark magic creature had obviously alerted the shop's defensive magical items. It's me, Mr. Borgin. As he spoke, he turned his back to the shop entrance, took off his mask, and then put it back on after Mr. Borgin looked bewildered. I don't know what's in your pocket, but keep an eye on it, Mr. Borgin tapped the mummy coffin with his wand to quiet it down before taking a box off the shelf behind him. When he opened it, he found a crystal skull with a long, pointed snout inside. Excluding the pointed beak, it is slightly larger than the skull of an adult human. What is this? Even the well-informed Lockhart hadn't seen everything before, and he looked at the thing in front of him with some doubt. Buddy, you've come at a very bad time. The family that makes the pensive is currently embroiled in a bitter family feud, and nobody has time to make pensives. The auras have also targeted the distribution channels in the Americas, so they can't deliver over for the time being. Mr. Borgin took the skull out of the box, turned it over, and placed it on the table. Then, holding the pointed jawbone, he lifted the entire skull, making it look somewhat like the ancient bronze wine vessel from Lockhart's past life. This thing has been used, but I've already had someone use a potion to clear away the residual memories inside. If you don't mind, you can use it as a brand new pensive. Mr. Borgin did not conceal this information from Lockhart, a regular customer and supplier. This design is really unique. Lockhart picked up the crystal skull and weighed it in his hand, finding that it wasn't very heavy. Made from the skull of a bird serpent, it's the oldest bone crystal meditation basin crafted in Egypt, and its value is extremely high. Mr. Borgin said with a regretful sigh, making such a meditation basin using the characteristics of a bird serpent is simply the pinnacle of craftsmanship. Unfortunately, it is said that there was an accident during the transaction, and the previous owner who possessed the control code died. Something went wrong. They probably didn't just rob it. If it was murder and robbery, of course they wouldn't know the safe's combination in the dead person's memory. The bird snake is a fascinating and magical creature that can change its size at will. At its largest, it is larger than a dragon, and at its smallest, it can easily squeeze into a small teapot. Clearly, the artisans and wizards who created it utilized this characteristic to achieve portability. Unfortunately, no one knows the secret code to control size, so it's useless now. Fortunately, this works too, Mr. Bokin pulled a small cloth bag from under the counter. It was made of coarse linen, and the craftsmanship didn't look very good. He carried the cloth bag in one hand and struggled to stuff the crystal bird snake skull into it with the other. The enormous magical artifact was thus easily stuffed into the palm-sized bag. A bag that has been enchanted with the unseen stretching charm. Lockhart was intrigued. This kind of thing was not common. Under the instructions of the International Confederation of Wizards, the Ministry of Magic strictly restricted the use of this spell. The auras were very strict in their investigations, and it was extremely difficult to find such an item even on the black market. But he didn't show it. He just glanced at the bag with some disdain, pursed his lips, and said, "Mr. Bokin, do you think this is the same?" "Mr." Bokin tossed the bag onto the table, shrugged, and said, "I think it's about right." "Had tilde." Lockhart didn't bother arguing with him and simply asked, "How much?" "Mr." Bokin narrowed his eyes, revealing the greasy smile typical of a shrewd businessman, and rubbed his hands together. "The prices for those things you asked me to handle last time are exactly right, so we're even." Wow. Lockhart hadn't expected that he had a shipment in Borgin's possession. He quickly searched his memory for information, and his expression immediately darkened. "It matches perfectly. Mr. Borgin, this is inappropriate. MMP. You swindler." At this point, he no longer cared about his strength. He slammed his hand on the table, braced himself on the counter, and looked down at the old man with a dangerous glint in his eyes. Mr. Bokin was clearly intimidated by his imposing manner. He had no idea that the person opposite him was bluffing. In his memory, Lockhart was a ruthless man who could always get his hands on some extremely high-quality smuggled goods. He couldn't help but shrink back, swallow hard, and explain weakly. "A regular meditation basin would be cheaper, but this is a top-tier one. It's not the kind made of mud or stone. It's made from the ossified crystal of a serpent's skull, a highly sophisticated alchemical technique that is extremely rare, and it used very expensive." Lockhart listened to his rambling with a cold laugh, then simply said, "It's second-hand. Hey, you can use it like brand new. It won't affect anything at all, Mr." Bokin exclaimed anxiously. The bird snake skull is indeed precious, but it has lost the effect that the bird snake skull brings. Without control, the secret language is meaningless. Lockhart's voice was full of disdain. Those who disdain the goods are the real buyers. Those who don't intend to buy have already turned and left. Mr. Bokin knew this. He braced his hands on the counter, stood on tiptoe, craned his neck, and strained his aged eyes. You need to know how to appreciate quality. Know your stuff. Lockhart, of course, knew his stuff. His eyes quickly scanned the store, and he recognized many of the items. The withered hand in the glass case is called the Hand of Glory. It was made from the hand of a greedy gambler. If a lit candle is placed on this hand, only the person holding the Hand of Glory can see the light of the candle. The grotesque wooden masks hanging on the wall are nameless and are typically used by priests in African witchcraft tribes. They possess an evil, twisted power that can instill fear and mental distortion in others who see them. The large black cabinet was the same vanishing cabinet that matched another vanishing cabinet in Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, which Ridlarco Malfoy repaired in the original story. The opal necklace bears a malevolent curse. The cursed, ornate jewelry itself has a fairy tale-like style. The reason, Mr. Borgin solemnly displays this item in his cabinet is mainly because it has killed 19 muggles, making it an object imbued with mysterious legends. Too much. Lockhart could tell you something about many things in the Borgenbox shop. He quickly recalled Lockhart's memories and his own memories of the original work. After thinking for a moment, he picked up a glass jar from the shelf, inside which was a constantly rolling eyeball. He placed it next to the cloth bag, saying, "Add this too, and we're even." "Mr. Boggin shouted, "This won't do." "I know you can still make a profit, you damn greedy swindler," Lockhart retorted. "I risked my life to get that shipment. You need to know that." "You damned writer, you're even greedier than me, Mr. Borgin slammed his fist on the table in anger. "Do you know how precious this magic eye is? Mad-Eye Moody had one, and it was thanks to it that he achieved such great feats." "Oh, really?" Lockhart crossed his arms, looking down at the other man with a cold laugh. "I think Moody should know where his mystic eye came from, but I don't know the origin of this eyeball. It is said that such a demonic eye may be made in pairs. I have no idea whether the other eyeball was damaged and lost, or whether it is in the possession of some malicious person who is ready to use it to curse the current holder of the demonic eye." "Mr. Bockin stared at him with a forced, sinister smile. "Since you know that, you still dare to take it." He quickly stopped laughing. Lockhart grabbed the little golden retriever by the scruff of its neck from the pocket of his wizard's robe. Even though it kept its promise and didn't attack anyone, humans still felt an overwhelming sense of fear when they looked at it closely. "Mr. Bodgen screamed in terror, 3 hands. "Get that monster away from me, damn it, get it away." Lockhart chuckled. "Of course I want it. This magic eye is a toy I bought for it." The little golden retriever stared at the eyeball in the glass jar with shining eyes, barking pleadingly at him. "Look, it likes it very much." Lockhart raised an eyebrow at Mr. Bodgen. "I'm going to lose a fortune, Mr. Borgin instinctively moved away from the powerful dark magic creature, pressing his back against the mummy coffin, but this still didn't give him any sense of security. He hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded, waving his hand dismissively as if shooing away a fly. Take it, take it. If you bring this monster with you again, you're not allowed to step into my shop." The two parties reached a satisfactory agreement. Lockhart's reason for showing the little blonde was naturally to let Mr. Borgin know that the demon eye would be in the little blonde's hands. If he dared to hold onto the other possible cursed eye, he wouldn't be so lenient if he suffered a backlash. Of course, this is not just a toy for the little golden retriever. Lockhart clearly remembered what would happen at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry that year, the appearance of the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. This magic eye will grant him the ability to look directly at the basilisk. When danger is imminent, it is natural to take precautions. 17. The Remnants of Ravenclaw. After getting his hands on the pensive, Lockhart continued toward the darkest corner of Knockturn Alley, where he was going to meet a dangerous man. Montungus Fletcher, the wizarding goods merchant. This dangerous man is so different from Mr. Bockin. He has no bottom line and can be described as a rat in a dark, stinking ditch. If Mr. Borgin still held onto some pride as one of the 28 holy pureblood families and wanted to maintain his influence among the dark wizards without going too far, then Mundungus, this scum who mingled at the bottom, truly went to any lengths. There's even an amusing anecdote circulating among dark wizards. Someone went to Mundungus to buy stolen goods, but during the transaction, Mundungus stole the items from his person and sold them to someone else. It is said that dragons follow dragon paths, rats follow rat trails, and snakes follow snake trails. Mundungus also has his own wisdom for survival. He was a well-informed individual lurking in the lower echelons of the wizarding world, and also a dealer in many high-end black market goods. For example, the Felix Felicis that Lockhart couldn't buy from Mr. Borgin, this guy was able to get his hands on. The preparation of Felix Felicis is not difficult. Although the process is complicated and may take up to half a year to brew, any apothecary who has mastered the basics of potion making can prepare it. The only requirement for this lucky potion to be successfully prepared is that the pharmacist himself must also be a lucky person. Leaving aside how such ethereal luck came into play, simply the fact that nothing went wrong during the 6 months of preparing this potion is already a very lucky thing. Therefore, folic acid is very rare and expensive. Lockhart was stared at by all sorts of malicious and strangely amused eyes along the way, and finally arrived at Mundungus's temporary lodging. Climbing the narrow staircase littered with garbage and reeking of rotten fertilizer, and pushing open a creaking little wooden door, the tall Lockhart had to stoop to get through the low doorway. Clang, tilde tilde tilde. Lockhart nearly fell flat on his face when he stepped on an empty wine bottle on the ground. He staggered a few steps and grabbed onto an iron cage. Suddenly, a pair of large purple eyes opened in the cage, which was piled with all sorts of random things. Lockhart blinked, examined the cage closely, and discovered that a fire dragon wearing an iron muzzle was chained up inside. The black dragon of the Hebdiri Islands appears to be a miner. The little golden retriever, who was now trembling with fear at the sight of the excited little golden retriever peeking out of Lockhart's robe pocket and looking at its purple dragon eyes, was now shivering. Guidro Lockhart tilde tilde tilde, a voice drawled, hoarse from a hangover, full of teasing. My old classmate, you've finally arrived. Lockhart looked in the direction of the sound and saw a short, fat man with a stubble beard sprawled on a dilapidated single sofa in the corner. When Lockhart looked over, the man raised the bottle in his hand as a gesture and began to gulp down his drink. I've disguised myself like this, and you still recognize me. Lockhart cursed under his breath for the rat's sharp eyes, removed his mask, and lowered his wizard's robe and hood as a sign of respect, revealing a standard perfect smile. Hey, long time no see, Mundungus Fletcher. Mundungus stood up, rubbed his slightly disheveled hair, pulled a box of cigars from the pocket of his dirty bathrobe, took one out and gestured to Lockhart. Want one? Lockhart shook his head and chuckled. I don't want to pass out after smoking a cigarette and wake up naked in the nocturne alley sewers. Oh, you piece of trash, have no right to talk about me like that. At least I only steal money, Mundungus said with a mocking tone. Lockhart's eyes narrowed, realizing this guy might have noticed something, but he pretended not to understand. Watching him subconsciously rub his back and rummage for a lighter, Lockhart chuckled. I heard you got beaten up by Moody again. Mundungus snorted, lit a cigar with his mouth, and after a while took a deep drag of smoke before coughing violently. The Wizards of America's top-grade Fire Dragon's Breath cigars are just awesome. He gave a thumbs up, then with a sour face began to curse, Mad-Eye Moody. That guy has always had a problem with me. Lockhart looked around the dimly lit room, unable to find a clean place to sit, so he crossed his arms and leaned against the cage, holding the fire dragon. I heard you were selling contraband at the class reunion again, which is why you got punched by Moody Justice. Mundungus looked very annoyed. That damn Gryffindor shouldn't even be in our Ravenclaw Alumni Association. Come on without Moody. our Hibiscus Ravenclaw Alumni Association would have disbanded long ago. Lockhart glanced dismissively at the casually piled items beside him. These items, which looked like they had been moved from some mansion, exquisite enamel plates and cabinets in the same artistic style. Who knows where they came from? Mundungus didn't want to talk too much about Moody, so he told Lockhart to wait and started rummaging through the messy pile of goods. In fact, the relationship between Mundungus, this rat in the gutter, and Moody, the aura leader, goes beyond just the Hibiscus Ravenclaw Alumni Association. Both of them were initial members of Dumbledore's Order of the Phoenix. Yes, Mundungus is a member of the Order of the Phoenix, the kind who is extremely loyal to Dumbledore. However, he was only loyal to Dumbledore. In the original story, he shamelessly emptied Sirius Black's house of all his valuables when his Order of the Phoenix comrade Sirius died, including one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, the locket, which Sirius's brother Regulus had sacrificed his life for. Lockhart suspected that Dumbledore in the original story would realize he was a memory thief, and it was this sharp-eyed Mundungus who provided the information. In the dim light, Lockhart's gaze also became somewhat somber. He reached into the pocket of his wizard's robe and stroked the little golden retriever's head, staring at Mundungus's back. If you're thinking of hitting me on the back of the head, I suggest you wait until I'm drunk. Mundungus turned around, cigar in mouth, and staggered over to Lockhart, shoving a small glass bottle into his hand. Lockhart rolled his eyes. You always think too darkly of people. I live in the light. I don't do that kind of thing. Yes, yes, yes. Mundungus exhaled smoke, his sharp eyes filled with a strange look through the thick smoke. You're a professor at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry now. Who knows when you'll become a high-ranking official in the Ministry of Magic? I wouldn't be surprised. Lockhart ignored his cryptic words and carefully examined the Felix Felicis in his hand. Folic acid is usually stored in a small, drop-shaped glass vial about the size of a thumb. This is not simply a packaging issue, but rather because this unique shape allows for better observation of the drug's condition. He held the Felix Felicis up to the dim light hanging from the ceiling, watching the distorted, shimmering potion inside the bottle. He then drew his wand and pressed it against the bottle, feeling the magical rhythm emanating from it, and nodded. No problem, right? Mundungus, a cigar dangling from his lips, stared intently at him. I went to great lengths to get this. Come on, Lockhart scoffed. Who knows where you picked this up from when you were buying it? This stuff is expensive to begin with. Don't expect to add any value to it. Felix Felicis has a certain market price, and there is considerable demand for this potion among dark wizards. In particular, some black wizards who are not from an academic background, or who did not learn their skills well during their school years, like to drink this when they are preparing important potions or making black magic items. With more transactions, a conventional price will emerge. Lockhart pulled out a bulging bag of galleons and tossed it over. Count them. Mundungus weighed it in his hand, then stuffed it directly into his bathrobe pocket. The number is correct. Since he was already there, Lockhart decided to place another order with Mundungus. Keep an eye out for dark magic creatures for me. Oh. No way, Mundungus choked in shock, coughing for a long time, his brow furrowed. I can get you Minister of Magic Fudge's underwear if you want it, but dark magic creatures. Buddy, I don't want to touch those horrible things. Dark magic creatures are less creatures and more of a phenomenon. The phenomenon is not a living being. It is immortal and indestructible. Without specialized skills, even the most powerful wizard cannot exert any advantage. Common dark magic creatures are relatively easy to deal with, such as boggarts, Peeves the mischievous elf from Hogwarts Castle, and Dementors, the jailers of Azkaban. But once you delve a little deeper into this field, the things you encounter are extremely terrifying. In fact, if the academics hadn't included the boggarts, dark magic creatures, in the curriculum, most wizards in the wizarding world would probably be helpless against these terrifying creatures. Information. I need information about dark magic creatures. I don't expect you to bring me one. Lockhart curled his lip at his expression. Oh, news. Okay, that's my area of expertise. Mundungus breathed a sigh of relief, then complained. Instead of being a relaxed best-selling author and a distinguished professor sitting in a spacious, bright office, you're going to dabble in this horrible stuff. You're just asking for trouble. Is there any possibility? Lockhart shrugged. My writings and teaching are limited to the realm of dark magic creatures. Mundungus, you should read more books. You're a Ravenclaw graduate, after all. Mundungus chuckled. Ravenclaw. Ravenclaw scum, my old chap. While it may not be the best way to put it, it's become a common perception that Ravenclaws produce graduates in various unconventional fields, much like Slytherin produces dark wizards and schemers, or Gryffindor produces auras and brute warriors. It's a very strong stereotype. 18. Dangerous experiment. With everything in place, Lockhart returned to his office at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, his expression growing increasingly grave. Magical experiments have always been synonymous with danger, fraught with countless unknown risks. Countless people have died from magical experiments. The reason Luna, the crazy girl in the original story, could see this Strauss was because her mother blew herself up in a spell experiment when she was 9 years old. There are far too many cases like this. Even the simplest basic potion mixing could have gone terribly if Professor Snape hadn't been keeping a close eye on it. Dark wizards and adult wizards who have left school do not have the benefit of being looked after by potion masters. Every year, news of several dying or becoming maimed is so common that it can only be relegated to the sidelines. For example, the most commonly used potion material, narcissus root, is easily attacked by a bacterium called Ledacheck during its daily cultivation and planting. One can imagine the disaster that would occur if narcissus roots with medicinal mycelium inside were placed in a crucible. Such a thing would be completely impossible at Hogwarts. Snape didn't even need to lift a finger. The school board members who controlled the school's procurement channels would have already arranged for a dedicated herbalist to select the cleanest products, since their children also attended the school. Therefore, you can never be too careful when conducting magical experiments. Lockhart checked each of the 3 items: the avian skull crystal meditation basin, the Felix Felicis, and the newly changed wand, over and over again. He tried to cast spells with his wand, but unfortunately, apart from successfully casting the Oblivion Charm, even the simplest levitation charm only managed to make the papers on the table sway slightly. He was not discouraged. He could now clearly feel the magic power within him, something that his former self would have envied. He knew how to be content. What else needs to be prepared? He pondered for a moment, then his eyes lit up. He went to his desk and began writing letters to the 4 children, Harry, Hermione, Ron, and Draco, asking them to come to his office for training after dinner. If something happens to him, these children will help him find other professors to come and assist him. He had originally planned to send the young wizards from the Newt class, but considering that these older students rarely get to visit Hogsmeade on weekends to play or date, he chose Harry and his friends, who had nothing better to do all day. After sending the message by owl, he hung a sign on the door that read "Magic Experiment in Progress, Do Not Disturb," closed the doors and windows, grabbed the little golden retriever, and repeatedly gave it instructions. I've bought you toys, so you need to know how to use them in crucial moments, understand? The little golden retriever blinked its eyes, nodded obediently, and ran to the office door with its newly acquired toy, the magic eye, squatting down like a doorman. Very good. Lockhart was very satisfied with its performance. He opened the bottle of Felix Felicis, took a sip, and rubbed his face to calm himself down as quickly as possible. Take it easy, Tilda. He took a deep breath, trying his best to relax and immerse himself in the relaxed and composed state that Lockhart used when casting spells. That state is the key to easily and successfully casting spells. Being anxious and hesitant will only make the magic unsure of what commands to follow. The technique for extracting memories is actually quite simple. He pressed the wand against his temple and gently, slowly, carefully pulled out a silver, glowing, linear substance. As it was flung into the meditation basin, the crystal bird snake's skull suddenly lit up, revealing numerous mysterious patterns and runes inside. Soon, the silver substance transformed into a silvery, mist-like liquid in the empty basin. This is an experiment to see if there are any problems with the pensive sold by Mr. Bodgin. Fortunately, although Mr. Bokin was greedy, he upheld the integrity of a businessman, so the pensive was normal. Looking down at the silvery liquid, one could vaguely see an old figure carrying a pumpkin lantern walking through the village streets. Lockhart looked at this memory with great interest from this angle. The old wizard pushed open his door, changed into his robe, extinguished the oil lamp, and curled up his thin, emaciated body into the warm quilt. He let out a long, comfortable sigh and quickly drifted off to sleep, snoring softly. Moonlight streamed through the window, and the faint sound of clothes rustling could be heard in the dim room. A hand slowly emerged from under the bed, holding a slender wand and pointing it at the old wizard on the bed. Forget everything, and all is emptiness. No one knows how powerful Lockhart's Oblivion Curse is. In fact, the effects of many spells, when they become extremely powerful, far exceed what most people can imagine. Take the Patronus Charm, for example. This spell can certainly be used to deal with the Dementors, the jailers of Azkaban, but no one has ever gone as far as Harry Potter, casting a spell that sent hundreds of Dementors fleeing in panic. This is an effect that no normal wizard could produce. Otherwise, Azkaban would have been breached long ago. Lockhart's Oblivion Curse is no exception. As the magic took effect, the old wizard on the bed trembled, and his entire head began to glow with silver light. Threads of silver light, like serpents, emerged from his head, swaying rapidly in midair. And then, as if fish were entering water, they all burrowed into Lockhart's head under the bed. Memory theft is that easy. When Lockhart quietly left, the old wizard in the bed was still snoring and having sweet dreams. When he woke up the next day, he was still as powerful as ever, except that he would forget the most wonderful memories of his life, nothing more. In fact, many powerful wizards are unaware that Lockhart has stolen their memories. Human thinking is a very unique thing. When the brain loses or modifies some memories in order to protect itself, it will eliminate all cracks and abruptness, and may even automatically modify some memories to fit these changes, ultimately making everything seem reasonable. Auras often do this to muggles, and I've never heard of a muggle experiencing any conflict in memory or thought as a result. In the office, Lockhart's movements became faster and faster, and memories were extracted one after another, including those of the original Lockhart and those of the dozen or so powerful wizards. Strip away all memories to examine whether there are any problems with your own memories, and to verify whether you have been affected by these memories. Everything went extremely smoothly. Later on, Lockhart could even easily wave his wand, causing strands of silver threads that floated from his temples to automatically fall into the pensive. This action even gave him more ideas and inspiration, based on Lockhart's original thoughts on the Oblivion Curse. The more skilled he became, the more cautious he became. He dared not loosen his grip on the wand for even a moment. However, the paradox of the wizarding world is sometimes like this. When only a small fragment of memory remains in your mind, you get stuck. Or rather, an overwhelming sense of fear, an involuntary surge within his soul, was frantically stimulating his brain. Stop! Stop right now! Lockhart's hand froze, and a sudden, clear realization dawned on him. He, this transmigrator, was a muggle. Completely devoid of the function these memories played in his brain, he was nothing. He will then face a huge problem. If he were to completely strip away these powerful wizarding memories, he would become a muggle. And muggles have no way to put those memories from the pensive back into their heads. In fact, at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, even Dumbledore probably couldn't easily do something like this, stuffing memories from the pensive that don't belong to him into his own head. Lockhart reacted with lightning speed. Before a look of terror even appeared on his face, he had already expertly brandished his wand at the pensive, Oblivion. In an instant, all the memories stored in the pensive surged out, turning into wisps of silver that floated into the air and swayed as they flew back toward Lockhart's head. It's a real shame that this attempt seems to have yielded nothing. All I know is that he was a muggle in his past life, but that's hardly a gain. Oh, there's another clear realization. The original Lockhart was a complete idiot. Relying on the powerful Oblivion charm, he recklessly stuffed magical memories into his head without any means of organizing or controlling them. No wonder he ended up as a brain-dead idiot. He squinted at the silver threads rapidly approaching in midair, realizing that these were not just simple memories. It seems I'll have to find some magical knowledge to study next. Lockhart sighed, patiently waiting for these memories to return to his mind, when suddenly his expression changed, and he exclaimed, "Oh no." 19 Forest Witch. Lockhart's entire body suddenly stiffened, unable to move at all. His eyeballs blinked rapidly in their sockets, and the muscles on his face sometimes tensed and sometimes relaxed, making him look exceptionally eerie. The silver memory threads that had been floating in midair finally approached, but just before they were about to make contact, they suddenly changed direction, each moving around in the air above the office, and finally all returning to the pensive, circling and converging into a ball of silver threads. It can no longer find the owner, who just cast the spell on it. Yes. Lockhart was horrified to discover that the last remaining memory of the powerful wizard in his mind was rapidly taking over his body. This magical memory is far more powerful than a muggle's ordinary memory or a muggle's soul. He cursed inwardly, his mind quickly plunging into complete darkness. The office fell into an indescribable, deathly silence. Gurgle. The golden retriever, who was playing with the magic eye, barked in confusion, unsure if this was the unexpected situation its owner had just mentioned. Should it intervene at this point? With a flick of its little paw, the magic eye disappeared from its hand. It then climbed up the clothes rack on all fours, reaching a position level with Lockhart's head, and looked at its master's eyes with a puzzled expression. However, all it saw was an unfamiliar gleam. Gurgle. It tilted its head in confusion. Just when it was uncertain, its owner finally made a move. Who am I? Lockhart, standing beside the pensive, paced a few steps around the office, looking around in confusion. And where am I? His movements looked completely different from the elegant Lockhart. He was more like a witch, with his little finger habitually sticking out as he held his wand. He shook his feet, then kicked off his shoes rather awkwardly, standing barefoot in the office, looking extremely wary. So he quickly waved his wand. A vibrant green light burst forth from the wand, transforming into a dazzling stream of light that meandered through the office. In an instant, the large oak table in the center of the office suddenly began to sprout branches, growing rapidly and unfurling tender green leaves. It grew upwards segment by segment, and in a very short time the trunk was as thick as an arm. It reached the ceiling and then quickly snaked to the side, sprouting branching limbs. It's not just the oak table. The antique cabinet made of mahogany, the high-backed chair made of Phoebe Genin wood, the bookshelf made of teak, and even the red, peeled wooden box containing the boggart had sprouted branches, revealing itself to be a peach tree. The peach tree, topped with a birdcage containing Cornish elves, grew tall and strong, and its thick branches soon